Outline, Introduction, Definition. What is universal grammar? Arguments for universal grammar, principles and parameters of universal grammars, criticism of universal grammars, and then conclusion. The concept of a universal grammar has been traced to the observation of Roger Bacon, a 13th century French Franciscan friar and philosopher, that all languages are built up in a common grammar. The expression was popularized in 1950s and 1960s by Noam Chomsky and other linguists. Universal grammar, commonly known as UG, is one of the most significant Chomsky theories in linguistics that aims to describe language as a human property and explain its origin. The theory proposed that the ability to learn grammar is hardwired into the brain and stands opposed to other grammars, example prospective, descriptive, and pedagogical. In fact, it suggests that linguistic ability manifests itself without being taught, and that there are properties that all natural human languages share. It is a matter of observation and experimentation to determine precisely what abilities are innate and what properties are shared by all languages. Chomsky has observed universal grammar is not grammar, but rather a theory of grammars, a kind of meta-theory or schematism for grammar. Then he said, let us define universal grammar as the system of principles, conditions, and rules that are elements or properties of all human languages, not merely by accident, but by necessity. Universal grammar is usually defined as the system of categories, mechanisms, and constraints shared by all human languages and considered to be innate. Universal grammar is taken to be the set of properties, conditions, or whatever that constitute the initial state of the language learner, hence the basis on which knowledge of a language develops. It by no means follows from such an account that there must be specific elements or rules or features common to all languages, unless we take these features in a suitably abstract manner. There are a lot of arguments for universal grammar. Over the years, a number of arguments have been put forward in support for this hypothesis approach. This includes the following. The first argument is language universals, which means universality. All human languages share a number of properties. Secondly, convergence. Children are exposed to different input yet converge on the same grammar, which means all languages learners, especially children, converge on the same grammar in spite of the fact that they are exposed to different input. Third argument is poverty of the stimulus. Children acquire knowledge for which there is no evidence in the input. Children know things about language which they could not have learned from the input available to them. The fourth argument is no negative evidence. Children know which structures are grammatical and do not acquire other general grammars in spite of the fact that they are not exposed to negative evidence. These four arguments are generally regarded as the most powerful ones. The fifth species specificity. We are the only species that has language. Sixth argument is ease and speed of child language acquisition. Children learn language quickly and effortlessly on minimal exposure. Seventh argument is uniformity. All children acquiring language go through the same stages in the same order. The eighth argument is maturational effect. Language acquisition is very sensitive to maturational factors and relatively insensitive to environmental factors. 9. Dissociations between language and cognition. Some clinical populations have relatively normal language and impaired cognition. Some have impaired cognition and relatively normal language. 10. Neurological separation. Different brain circuits are responsible for representing, processing linguistics and non-linguistics information. Arguments from 5 to 10 are subsidiary in the sense they only provide support for the idea of innateness of language general rather than the innateness of a specific aspect of linguistics urbanization, and they are also open to other interpretations. Principles and parameter in universal grammar. The term principles and parameters theory has become more popular in recent years, as it conveys that unique central claims of the theory that language knowledge consists of principles universal to all languages and parameters that vary from one language to another. It consists of various subsystems of principles. This includes X-bar theory, bending theory, case theory, theta theory, bounding theory, and so forth, each containing certain principles with a limited degree of parametric variation. In addition, there are certain overriding principles such as the projection principle if I, full interpretation, and the principles of licensing. Universal grammar also contains certain concepts such as the concept of domain and the related notions of command and government. Criticism of universal grammar. One of the famous critics of universal grammar was given by Daniel Everett, who claims that Chomsky's idea about universal grammar and the universality of recursion in particular are falsified by the language of the Peraha people of Amazonian basin the work with. His book Language the Cultural Tool explores his theory that language isn't innate but a tool developed by humans to solve problems. But Chomsky replied to his critics in a magazine interview by saying, "There are people who misunderstand the term, but I can't deal with that. It's perfectly obvious that there is some genetic factors that distinguishes human from other animals, and that is language specific. The theory of that genetic component, whatever it turns out to be, is what is called universal grammar. It can be true. These people are genetically identical to all other humans with regard to language. They can learn Portuguese perfectly easily just as Portuguese children do. So they have the same universal grammar the rest of us have. What Everett claims is that the resources of language do not permit the use of the principle of universal grammar." As a conclusion, universal grammar is a suspect concept. There is a divergence among linguists' view about what is or is not in universal grammar. They do not agree on what it actually contains. And as we have seen, many arguments that have been put forward in favor of some kind of an innate universal grammar. However, some linguists criticize these arguments, therefore they challenge important aspects of universal grammar. Thank you for your attention.